too much that in our poverty, in our hand, I'm going to come and deliver them broken, destroyed, messed up, poor, impoverished people. I'm going to.
Yo niggas ain't tough. Yo niggas ain't tough.
Hey, Shalom, Israel. Yahweh Bashim Yahushua Brakatah. Yahweh Shema Allah Thug Bashim Yahushua to all the sisters, man. Listen, it's Captain 13,000 and called up around checking in with the Israelite School of UPK under Commander GEN.YAHANNA. Listen, man, this year's 52nd annual Passover. Hold on. I'm gonna say it one more time. This year's 52nd annual Passover under Commander GEN.YAHANNA under the I.S.U.P.K. Couldn't do it last year. Y'all already know the Lord had his foot on our oppressor's neck.
Here in New York City, there are roughly 1,000 cases a day. Those are numbers they haven't seen since May.
Can't do it in New York this year because the Lord still got his foot on our oppressor's neck.
New York, the center of the outbreak this spring, is now teetering on another deadly explosion of the virus.
But listen to me good. This year, 52nd annual Passover, April 24th, 2021. You understand? It's going to be in H-Town, baby.
It's going to be at the B&H Ranch, 14149 Players Street, Houston, Texas.
Y'all know what we do. Y'all know what we came to do. Huh?
2021, I.S.U.P.K, 52nd annual Passover. All the generals gonna be there. All the heavy hitters gonna be there. The daughters of Zion gonna step out with their beautiful long dresses, you understand? Strong on deck. That One West style music on deck. 52nd annual Passover.
B&H Ranch, 14149 Players Street, Houston, Texas.
Get with it to get lost, man.
Got it out the mud, straight up out the base. The world done made me crazy. The world done turned crazy. You dealing with the men of war. We at war. I'm siding with the Lord of course. On one accord. We ain't never stopping now. You running now. All my niggas go to ground. We go.
Yo, this is General Kathungabal with Captain Ashapani and Officer Kazak Ahmad. Let a Hebrew speak. Today we're going to discuss during the time of Christ and before Christ, because a lot of brothers really don't go into what was going on with Jerusalem, Nazareth, and the oppression that the poor Israelites were suffering, and how the Romans was, making them pay all kinds of taxes, and how the so-called leadership of Israel was getting rich with the Romans, and how there were certain brothers that was rising up during the time a little bit before Christ and after Christ.
This is from the book Zealot, page 38. The problem with Nazareth is that it was a city of mud and brick. Even the most elaborate buildings, such as they were, would have been constructed of stone.
Right, just like the projects. The projects is brick and mortar. Go ahead.
There were wooden beams in the roofs, and surely the doors would have been made of wood. A handful of Nazarenes may have been able to afford a wooden furniture, a table, some stools, and perhaps a few could have owned wooden yokes and plows.
In other words, Nazareth was a poor country. You know what I mean? The Israelites that were very poor, that's where they lived. They could barely afford furniture, wooden door. Go ahead.
With which to sow their meager plots of land. But even if one considers tekton to mean an artisan who
a tekton was a dude like y'all know of like a day laborer, somebody that you would hire to do carpentry work for that day. You know what I mean? Like if you look at it, it's just like you would see in the mornings at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and you would see blacks and Latinos on the subway, and they going into the major cities to do work, just like in D.C. They'll live out in Maryland, but they'll work and their building will be inside D.C. or Friendship Heights, the rich area. Go ahead.
To meet an artisan who deals in any aspect of the building trades. The 100 or so impoverished families of a modest and utterly forgettable village such as Nazareth, most of whom themselves live barely above substance level, could in no way have sustained Jesus' life.
You understand? Meaning below the poverty level. Go ahead.
As with most artisans,
I'm just giving you a history on what was going on because the Bible don't go into this part of history. So I'm just going into it because a lot of things that Christ said in the Bible is referring to the lifestyle that the poor people were living, which was different from the lifestyle of the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the high priests, right, and the Herodians. Go ahead.
As with most artisans and day laborers, Jesus and his brothers would have to go to bigger towns and cities to ply their trade.
Right. So they would live in Nazareth and they would go to the neighboring city. Go ahead.
Fortunately, Nazareth was just a short walk from one of the largest and most affluent cities in Galilee.
Galilee is where they had money at. The so-called rich Negroes lived there. Go ahead.
The capital city, Sepphoris. Sepphoris was a sophisticated urban metropolis, as rich as Nazareth was poor.
All right, you see the thing. As Nazareth was poor, Sepphoris was rich.
Right.
Everybody there was in the money, in the wealth. Go ahead.
Whereas Nazareth had not a single paved road. The roads of Sepphoris were wide avenues surfaced with polished slabs of stone and lined with 2-story homes boasting open courtyards and private rock-cut cisterns.
Right. Go up to although.
Page 39. Although Sepphoris was a predominantly Jewish city, as evidenced by the synagogues and ritual houses that have been unearthed, these were a wholly different class of Jews than those found in much of Galilee.
Right. These was filthy rich people here. Go ahead.
Rich, cosmopolitan, deeply influenced by Greek culture, and surrounded by a panoply of races and religions. The Jews of Sepphoris were the product of the Herodian social revolution.
Meaning they had other heathens in that area.
Right.
You know what I mean? Getting money off the poor.
Right.
Go ahead and skip down to right here, the liking.
Yes, sir. Like his father Antipas had a passion for large-scale building projects, and in Sepphoris he found a blank slate upon which to design a city in his own image.
I need you to go up where it says however.
Right. Okay. Yes, sir. Going up. However, it was not until Herod's son Antipas, the fox, chose it as a royal seat in his territory, probably sometime around the turn of the 1st century CE, that the stalwart city of Sepphoris became known throughout Palestine as the ornament of Galilee.
You hear that? And Antipas, the fox. So he's mentioned it also into the Bible. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
Like his father Antipas had a passion for large-scale building projects, and in Sepphoris he found a blank slate upon which to design a city in his own image. This is because when Antipas arrived at Sepphoris with a cohort of Roman soldiers in tow, the city was no longer the central hub of Galilee. It had been under his father's rule. It was still smoldering heaps of ash and stone, a victim of Roman retribution for the rebellions that had broken out across Palestine in the wake of Herod the Great's death in 4 BCE.
Right. So it was other rebellions because the Israelites were trying to rebel against the Romans. Now you got to remember during the time of the Maccabees, after they got rid of the Greeks were still pushing hard, but they made a league with the Romans. Once that happened, the Romans came in and they just started to take over. Go ahead.
When Herod died, he left behind far more than the seething populace eager to exact revenge on his friends and allies.
Go ahead, let me read the Fox where Christ mentions it.
Come on. Luke chapter 13, verse 32. And he said unto them, Go ye and tell that fox, Behold, I cast out devils, and I do curses today and tomorrow, and the third day I shall be perfected.
Right. And this is here Christ talking about Antipas. You know what I mean? Christ hated the Herodians and he hated Herod's family. He hated the Romans. Let's get some more. Skip that, go down to right here. It was around.
Page 40 of the book Zealot. It was around this time that a new and far more fearsome group of bandits arose in Galilee.
And the so-called Romans used to label anybody that was radical, anybody that was militant, anybody that was against the Romans, they called them, the word they used was bandit. Go ahead.
Led by a magnetic teacher.
Not that, like the movies always talk about Barabbas being a bandit. They called any Negro that would rob a Roman, which it is a bandit, but they was robbing the Romans. You'll find out later on. They was robbing the Romans because they couldn't stand the Romans and they wanted to get the Romans about the land. Right. So, read it again?
It was around this time that a new and far more fearsome group of bandits arose in Galilee, led by a magnetic teacher and revolutionary known as Judas the Galilean. The traditions say that Judas was the son of the famed bandit chief Hezekiah,
which his father was a bandit, you know what I mean? Which really was revolutionaries. Right. They was just brothers like the Black Panthers. You know what I mean? They think that they're going to beat the Romans by fighting them, by robbing them. Right. You know what I mean? But they just wasn't like some stick-up kids. Read?
And the failed Messiah whom Herod had captured and beheaded 40 years earlier as part of his campaign to clear the countryside of the bandit menace. It's about me. It sounds like Donald Trump and his law and order campaign. Right. That's what it sounds like.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, that was it. I just want to bring that.
Oh, okay. Don't sweat. Go ahead and read after Herod's death.
After Herod's death, Judas the Galilean joined forces with a mysterious Pharisee named Zadok.
So this is another brother he joined forces. Now these cats is going up against the Romans. This is what they don't tell you about. And certain questions that they asked Christ, right. Like for instance, when he asked Christ about who do we pay tribute to? Right. That you'll find out in this book, it was because this cat Judas, I think it was Judas the Galilean, that he went at the Romans real hard when the Romans came to tax them. Right. And they thought Christ was just as radical as these guys. And they thought that they could entrap Christ and bring up sedition on Christ. Right. Which was a death penalty by the Romans.
Continue. Zadok to launch a wholly new independent movement that Josephus termed the fourth philosophy, so as to differentiate it from the other three philosophies.
Right. Okay, go ahead.
The Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Essenes.
Those are the other three. So this one is different from all those other radical groups, which the Pharisees and the Sadducees were not even radical. They were in league with the Romans. Go ahead.
What set the members of the fourth philosophy apart from the rest was their unshakable commitment to freeing Israel from foreign rule and their fervent insistence, even unto death, that they would serve no Lord save the one God. There was a well-defined term for this type of belief, one that all pious Jews, regardless of their political stance, will have recognized and proudly claimed for themselves: zeal.
Right. Okay.
Continue.
Now go down to where the very land of Israel.
The very land of Israel was claimed through zeal, for it was the zealous warriors of God who cleansed it of all foreigners and idolaters, just as God demanded. Whosoever sacrifices unto any God but the Lord alone shall be utterly annihilated.
So these cats was going around. If you was down with the Romans, right, or you were worshiping any God, they would just put you to death. It would be like today, if you was in the Christian church, we'll roll up in the Christian church and slaughter everybody. Right. Man, women, and children. Go ahead.
If I put too, like, okay, the zealots at that time before Christ, they had that mindset of like fake Israelites. I'm gonna say why. This is why. Because in the time when we was taking the land, right, the Lord gave an order. The Lord didn't give them the order to do that, but they let their frustration. No, they get together. They want righteousness, but it's like these people have a zeal, not according to knowledge. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, because they reference that shit, but the Lord didn't get that order though.
Right. And that's why, like in the book of Acts,
right,
Gamaliel, what's his Gamaliel? Gamaliel. That's why he said it. And he was mentioning it, these cats. And he said, if it was of the Lord, you know, he said, first leave them alone. Right. He said, because if it's of the Lord, they're going to come to nothing. And then he started bringing up this here.
Right.
With these men. Right. They're like,
what happened. Right.
Right. He's like, they got slaughtered. It wasn't of the Lord.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that's cool right there.
Continue.
Yep.
Many Jews in first century Palestine strove to live a life of zeal, each in his or her own way.
Meaning they wasn't together.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's one thing about the UPK. We together.
Right.
And we rolling like Christ.
Right.
They wasn't. They just doing whatever.
Right. You understand? Like Gen.YAHANNA got this, he's keeping that rank system. You know what I mean? And that brotherhood and that discipline where he know in order to defeat the white man, you got to have brotherhood and the teaching of the Most High.
Right.
Like that's the main thing. And you'll separate. Go ahead.
But there were some who, in order to preserve their zealous ideals, were willing to resort to extreme acts of violence if necessary, not just against the Romans and uncircumcised masses, but against their fellow Jews who dared submit to Rome. They were called zealots. These zealots should not be confused with the zealot party that would arise 60 years later.
Another group after Christ, they rise up and they they go off.
Right.
Like it's a continue until the Lord, he wiped us off the land. You can skip down to such ideas.
Such ideas had existed long before Judas, the Galilean. Excuse me. Such ideas had existed long before Judas the Galilean came along. But Judas was perhaps the first revolutionary leader to fuse banditry and zealotry into a single revolutionary force, making resistance to Rome a religious duty incumbent on all Jews.
Right. He had his force thinking that it is of the Most High. That's what they mean by religious. You know. Go ahead.
It was Judas's fierce determination to do whatever it took to free the Jews from foreign rule and cleanse the land in the name of Israel's God that made the fourth philosophy a model for zealous resistance for the numerous apocalyptic revolutionaries who would, a few decades later, join forces to expel the Romans from the Holy Land.
We're going to skip to 42.
what's the movement?
No. Matter of fact, we're gonna go. Now we'll stay here.
Okay. Ending in 41. In 4 BCE, Herod, with Herod the Great dead and buried, Judas and his small army of zealots made a daring assault on the city of Sepphoris. They broke open the city's royal armory and seized for themselves the weapons and provisions that were stored inside. And
that's what Negroes always tell us. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Getting guns.
Right.
Like that dude, what's his name? Jan Master J.
Right.
You know what I mean? To show, you know, and the Romans wiped them the hell out eventually.
Right.
We know. Go ahead. Come on with it.
They're willing to do anything to deliver Israel from the Romans except stop sinning.
Yeah. Right.
They willing to once we sinning, once we stop sinning,
If I could too. Right. That's what the tag by itself, not giving the F, is the spirit of what we're reading now.
Right.
Is that
exactly.
Continuing. Now fully armed and joined by a number of symptoms.
And you know, that's our and that's our biggest mistake. You never that's the thing about the truth. You gotta examine yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean? You gotta examine yourself, and then you gotta have the Lord on your side.
That's it.
And then when you have the Lord on your side, you realize that the Lord is gonna fight your battle.
Yeah, that's it.
You know
don't
what
go
I mean?
no other way.
Or all of a sudden, then I'm gonna be your Messiah. If I get a small win, now I'm gonna think I did it.
You're gonna think it's you.
It's all on me. Yeah, it's on me. Go ahead.
Now fully armed and joined by a number of sympathetic Sepharines, the members of the fourth philosophy launched a guerrilla war throughout Galilee, plundering the homes of the wealthy and powerful.
But I had to laugh because he attacking also the rich.
You're gonna get that too because they said us too.
Right. But it just realized but he see it, and this is the thing that poor black people don't see. Or how I remember GEN.YAHANNA used to say this. Rich Negroes hate poor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can see what he doing and why he doing it, because they in league, he thinking, even though he sinning, but he thinking they the problem.
He have it right. He have all the way right.
You know what I mean?
Problem. Yeah.
I'm gonna eliminate them and them because they the problem.
Right.
You know what I mean? All right.
Yeah.
But like you said, the problem always is you gotta be right.
Yeah, that final thing.
Yeah. And that's the difference with Christ. He was right.
Right. Okay.
You know what I mean? He was all the way right.
Right. And that's why they didn't want to follow it.
Yeah.
Because it would mean they had to stop doing what they're doing. Not that he didn't want to go, trample them or rush them.
Right. He told them I could bring down 12 legions of nations.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest problem with Christians, fake Israelite groups.
That's right.
Because when you bring up a topic of weed,
right, it's a problem.
Israelites are just a lineup.
Right. But nowadays, with these women telling them they can't have sex with whoever. Right. Now you ain't about the revolution. What does that have to do with the revolution?
Right.
They don't understand that.
They don't really, you know what I mean? They don't get it, man. They don't get it. That's the thing about the other groups, man. They hate other, and I'm not just talking about them camps. I'm talking about them brothers that be at home talking mad, crazy nonsense.
Man.
Right. How the hell I'm gonna get on another group that's out in the streets while I'm at home under my woman.
Right.
And I say under my woman because you are under your woman. Because she's usually the one that you got to battle before you can leave out there.
Right. Yep.
You know what I mean?
You going on that crazy nigga again?
Right. Or you two got there weak and you battling against yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know? You battling against yourself.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Guerrilla war throughout Galilee, plundering the homes of the wealthy and powerful, setting villages ablaze, and meting out the justice of God upon the Jewish aristocracy and those who can continue to pledge their loyalty to Rome.
So this cat was just, him and his crew was just going out, killing everybody. Right. As much as he can kill. Go ahead.
The movement grew in size, and ferocity throughout the following decade of violence and instability. Then, in the year 6 CE, when Judea officially became a Roman province and the Syrian governor Quirinius called for a census to tally, register, and properly tax the people and property in the newly acquired region, the members of the fourth philosophy seized their opportunity. They used the census to make a final appeal to the Jews to stand with them against Rome and fight for their freedom. The census, they argue, was an abomination. It was an affirmation of the slavery of the Jews.
Right. Even they looked at it as slavery under the Romans. Go ahead.
If I could say something too.
Sure.
And a lot of people who come up on these platforms, this is Commanding General Yohanna, this is General Kathungabar of the I.S.U.P.K. And what we're reading in this book, Zealous, you got to understand, there's nobody white that we're reading about. This is every black and Hispanic and Native American Indian going through these things in the Roman era, the same thing we're going through in America.
Exactly.
You know?
It's the same thing. Same exact thing.
If I could, so like that same spirit, okay, it is the fighting the oppression of the rich and the Romans, but that's what Esau trying to do now with this Proud Boy and all of them trying to come together to fight the rich. It's that same mindset. We had to do this, we had to attack them, not seeing that they the problem. Like that them saying Proud Boys and Antifas, they was oppressors all the goddamn time. They want that to stop being oppressors.
Exactly. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And but you know what's so ironic?
Come on.
Right. And it's crazy because like white people know that they being robbed or they feel they're not getting a fair share of the American pie. Blacks and Latinos, like we've been pounded out so much that we say this is the way life is.
Yeah. We accept it. We build life around this shit.
And I remember one day in class, General Muhammad said, he said, black people live their life through a black celebrity.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, and I look around and I said, damn, we imitate them. Whatever a black celebrity say, it's right. You know what I mean? It's like, it's damn near like it's the right thing.
Yeah.
Like my brother is like that. He's like, yo, this is the way it is now. It's supposed to be acceptable and nobody's fighting for, fighting against wickedness.
Yeah, actually right and wrong is always but they got money though. But they're winning though.
Yeah, right.
But
yeah, the money, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but you ain't got it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like you ain't, you know what I mean? Like the pie ain't gonna be given to everybody.
Right.
And it's that way for a reason. That they pacify you with celebrities.
Right.
You know what I mean? And everybody's fine with it. Everybody see a black celebrity, they think it's up to you. Mm-hmm. Ain't no more racism.
Right.
Everybody has a fair, you know what I mean? Like that, and that's why like a lot of times I be on Facebook in other groups that are not Hebrew Israelite groups, just to see how people think, and to see how our people think, like blacks and Hispanic, and how lame blacks and blacks and Latino men are.
Right.
Like when you look at it, and it could be just because I've been in the UPK so long that it ain't nothing but we gravitate to strength. You know what I mean? Righteousness.
Yeah.
Fight against anything that's crazy out of the ordinary of righteousness.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it seemed like one part of us is just weaker and weaker and weaker.
Mm-hmm.
Like, damn, like y'all got kids in school. And I know damn near y'all like super black sheep, you know what I mean? Like your kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I can understand you let your kid be a kid.
Right.
But damn, what would happen to them when they go to college and
way to draw the line?
you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you gotta fight against a lot of stuff, man. Yep. Like damn near me telling people I don't eat pork, it becomes now a question why I don't eat pork.
Yeah. Right.
Like I'm supposed to eat pork.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like I got a dude that I know when I drive for, it's like something wrong with me because I don't want to buy a horse. So just a couple of weeks ago, it was a Hamite there. I'm sitting down waiting to do delivery of the truck for a sofa. Right. And they started discussing it about me. Now I said, yeah, I ain't messing with him. I said, yo, man, once I lay with a woman, I said, that's my wife.
Right.
I said, I'm not, some dude that's running around just trying to pop women, especially not no horse. You know what I mean? Right. So the Hamite says, yo, that's stupid. I checks this Hamite. I said, what the you talking about? I said, you just ain't no man. You ain't got no morals.
Right.
And that's what makes a man, having morals,
right.
having judgment, man, making the right decision. Yo. And he said, I understand.
And you know what, too? The horse he gonna buy ain't Africans.
Right.
Exactly. That's why he's saying that stupid. I know. Like he ain't buying horses in Nigeria and Lagos and Ghana.
They not having it. The Africans women here not having it.
They ain't having that shit.
If I could too, that's so powerful what you said. The other day I was watching one of the Israel, what's the name? The UFC fighter. And they asked him, well, why didn't you fight Usman, which is another Nigerian?
So
and he said this. He said, we Nigerians, we're never gonna fight each other.
Yeah. Usman said that.
Yeah.
Usman said he said because them is the next two.
Yeah.
He said I'd rather see two Africans with two belts, with one each, than to see one African with two belts. We need to dominate. But to get them belts, they have to fight Israelites.
Yep.
Which is proof them Hamites know we are not them.
Right.
Like he had no problem fighting Anderson Silva at 40 years old for a belt and beating that old man up. Yeah. For the sport, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when the two of them on top now, they posing and shit and they say, Usman say, now African, this is African time now.
Yeah, man, listen. And that's why, like, in this city, there's a lot of Africans.
Right.
So when Barack Obama won, I've had to hear it.
Right.
From Africans, going like that was like they literally said to themselves, it took us to get to the White House. They couldn't do it. Black could not do it. You know what I mean?
I think there's a video with that too, sir, of this Hamite on the internet. I don't know because I could find it, where he went in the store and dude was saying, when you see you black Americans, you ain't right, man. You don't act right.
Right.
He's like, when Obama got in office, that was us. That wasn't you.
Right.
He's not one of you. He said.
Right.
And the brother's like, are you racist? He said, no, man, I'm not racist. I'm just telling you the truth. We're not the same. He's like, what do you mean we're not the same? He's like, y'all don't act right. He's like, Obama, that was us.
Yeah. That's how they took it.
Yep.
I was like, that was another reason why I hated that. Hated black Negro leadership. You know what I mean? Like they made it acceptable, just like this East Indian they got. And have you ever heard her say that she was black? Mm-mm. She's always mentioning that she's East Indian.
Right.
She never mentioned, and black people are still eating that up. Still eating that up like she's black. Go ahead.
One quick point. Yeah. Also, and that shows you. With all that, I'm looking for change, and we're still in the same misery.
Yeah.
For 400 plus years. And we hate to be told we're still in the same misery. Is that, when being in the misery should make us want to say, you know what, we got to stop these vices that we're doing, stop these things that we're doing, and now turn back to what can really benefit us. You know, the ISUPK, we've been telling brothers and sisters since 1969, this is the only way to go down. This road right here, the ISUPK, under Command General Honda, under Christ, you know what I'm saying? This is the only road to go down. There's no other way. You know what I'm saying? And we're reading historical records of us trying to find a way and not getting what we needed, not going down the right way. Right. And we're going to continue reading this book.
Right. And let me say this, like people like Nick Cannon, people like what's my man, LeBron James, they should be contacting us. People like Kaepernick, they should just say, what do you got to say about this?
Right.
Like they supposed to be contacted, you know what I mean, the generals and stuff like that.
Right.
I mean, that's what I would do. I would at least look for my own first.
Who start? Yeah, start doing something. Start doing something.
Right. They go to white people or other Negroes that are sellouts.
Because once again, to come here, you gonna have to stop doing that shit you're doing.
Right.
And they ain't trying to do that because I think it's like LeBron at his stage now. It's not even about the money with it. Like really, he could say radical shit and his money gonna still be there.
Still.
Like he done surpass a certain level.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
He done pass a certain level, so he could start to say and do stuff now.
Yeah.
And he's still gonna be fine.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's still gonna be fine.
And that and really that's the point of you making money so you be your own boss.
Right.
Like I don't even understand that.
Right.
Like how you get you know, you get to a status of, you know, wealth and you still scared.
Right.
But you know the reason why they still scared? Because they know that they can't come back to the hood. And they terrified of dealing with their own poor people, man.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah.
That's why Jay-Z don't go back to Brooklyn.
Right.
He terrified.
Right.
If he was feeding his neighborhood, he'll be able to live and stay in his neighborhood.
Right.
Because they're gonna protect him, because they're gonna say, yo, he invested in us.
Right.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And you're gonna protect whoever invests money in you and from your hood.
Right.
Like if I was to get millions of dollars, I'm not gonna go live in Potomac.
Right.
I'm gonna stay in the hood.
Build that shit up.
Build that up.
Yep.
And then let everybody on try to change some real lives. You know what I mean? Like I don't really understand it, but the white man ain't gonna allow them to do that because you know the people who they got managing their money and all that.
Right.
Their minds is you know what I mean? Yeah, he brainwashed.
You know, that's what happened with Deion Sanders. You heard what happened to him this weekend, right?
No, what happened to him?
You know, he's
Salaki, we diverted. I know we I get with the brothers. We start bringing each other up to speed. Salaki, you know what I mean?
But it's on the topic, but he's one of the rich. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, he's the coach of LSU, right? Or is LSU or Florida State? FSU, I think. I think it's Florida State.
Okay.
Right. And they played their first game this weekend, and they crushed the team like 50 points or some shit like that. But remember, he went there. He made a statement. He was going there to build a black football college team where black athletes don't have to be lost to the white Ivy League schools.
Right.
They don't have to go to the the UCLAs, and then they could come and play with a black school.
Right.
Create a future for black identity.
Exactly.
Right. He said when he said his players, they called him up. They say they couldn't do all this without him. They thank him. They give him the match ball. He said he never felt so emotionally moved in his whole career from that moment, seeing them brothers,
right.
give him thanks for coaching them.
Yeah.
He went back to his office, all his shit stolen. His cell phone, his wallet, his hat. He said everything gone. He got in the press conference. He said, this is what I'm talking about. When I said we had to raise our level, I'm talking about everybody. He's like, imagine that. And we done play this game, the first home game, and all my shit going and say, yeah, them devils, they don't like you. Yeah. They don't like it, and you gonna have to. Yeah, and this is the first radical stuff he did. He was signing.
Because that can change. That can change all of college football. And let me tell you something, Shop. Now imagine that, and then black sisters would not, our sisters would not be getting poisoned in them white Ivy League schools from them white girls.
Right.
You know what I mean? That would start making us say, let's go to our own colleges and we ain't got to put up with all that of being poisoned.
Right.
Like it needs to, that's why, man, I wish, only reason I wish Trump was still in office
is
because it was helping black people to wake up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then they started singling out, there's only this portion, you know what I mean? When all of them are devils.
Yeah.
Like Democrats is just sneaky.
Yeah.
They're a little smarter. They keep their mouth shut while they destroy you.
Yeah.
And they kill more than the Republicans, in my opinion. But that's only my opinion. It ain't God's word. It ain't what I'm taught. You know what I mean?
They're all devils.
They're all devils.
They're going to come up against him hard. Because, this is the first time he came out against like a big institution. He was signed with Nike before. He was like huge Nike franchise.
Oh yeah. Dion was the man.
Was the man in prime time.
He could play different positions
and different sports.
You know what I mean?
He was good in baseball.
And he learned baseball, right? I forgot about that.
Yeah.
You're right.
He was
like nice in it too.
Exactly. He was like a top tier, A1. And he was like the face of Nike at one time, for that sport.
Yeah.
He went to Nike because once he retired, he always was in youth football coaching black boys. He went to Nike and asked Nike to sponsor his academy. He said Nike treat him like he ain't do shit for them, and that's that. He said after that he dropped the whole deal. He went with Under Armour. He said they wanted him to come back because they wanted his name on the shoes they would bring, the retro shoes.
Right.
He said, I don't want my name on the old product, man. He's like, you don't really care about nobody.
Yeah, that's
He's
good.
like, I want people who be with my brand. And he do some radical stuff, so they don't have him in their mind as this is a nigga we gonna have to start to mess with.
Yeah.
Watch and see, they're gonna bring a scandal out on him just.
I know. Yeah, they always do.
Yeah.
To get rid of his contract.
Oh yeah. Okay. Continue.
Yo, that was heavy though. I'm glad I'm sloppy. That's what's needed.
Yep.
I had went to, believe it or not, I went to college for 6 months. 6 months. I tried everything. The truth is the only thing I stayed with for years. You know what I mean? I would just keep it 100. You know what I mean? I tried, we tried college, tried the military. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we all try something.
You know what I mean? But the truth is though, my point is, when I went to University of Buffalo, right? I really wasn't feeling it. But when I got back, my older sister, who always, taught me what little black radical stuff, coming up. And I always told you about her, the shop.
Right.
And she said, you know what? She said, you should have went to Lincoln. She said, you shouldn't have went. She said, you don't fit with them. She said, you should have went to an all-black college. Man. She
said, have space for that thought.
Yeah, because she knew the whole time, because, I went to Catholic school.
Right.
They kicked me out for fighting and all that. But I had them white boys. Right. And that's why I've always been, I've always been, had a thing against white people.
Right.
It's just only now, into the truth, I felt justified on how I was feeling because, you feeling guilty from the brainwashing.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But that's why I say what he's doing is real, it could change
a whole lot.
It could change a whole lot.
It could change a lot.
Yeah.
And he's sacrificing a lot personally. Because he's putting himself out there, he's taking less money, they're gonna start physically attacking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He might have put all his finances in order too. Because he's not a dumb dude.
No, he ain't.
And that's really all you got to do. Like the scripture said, if you want to take a city, you got to plan.
Count the cost.
Yeah.
Yep.
Count the cost.
Right. Yeah. And NCAA, they recently say how with all their games and stuff, how they use the college athletes, but they don't get them no money. Right. they recently starting to change it up now to say college athletes could get a portion of the money they make from all the games and the merchandise.
Right.
Guess what they're doing now with the games and the merchandise?
What's that?
They're not putting the names there.
What you mean?
Like, you know, the video game, like NCAA or like 2K or whatever.
Yeah.
Before, they actually used to put the players' names and faces.
Oh, yeah.
Now, they're not putting the names and faces. So now, okay, yeah, we'll pay you, but there's nothing to pay you for because we're not using your image. That's how nasty these bastards are. He cunning. He not gonna give you nothing.
Right. He's a bastard. Right. Just like, Go ahead.
Continue in the book of Zealot. It was affirmation of the slavery of the Jews to be voluntary tallied like sheep was, in Judah's view, tantamount to declaring allegiance to Rome. It was an admission that the Jews were not the chosen tribe of God, but the personal property of the emperor.
That's how this brother took it. He said, "Yo, this tax."
Couple cars, sir.
You got it?
Yep, couple cars, sir.
I'm ready for it.
Couple cars, sir.
All right. This brother. I mean, you just have it ready for me.
Couple.
This brother took it like you don't belong with God. You're not God's chosen people.
Right.
You, the Roman emperor's people. You're his property. Go ahead.
Couple cars. Matthew chapter 22.
Oh, hold on. Keep reading.
It was
No sweat, sir.
It was not the census itself that so enraged Judas and his followers. It was the very notion of paying any tax or tribute to Rome. What more obvious sign was needed than the subservience of the Jews?
Right.
The tribute was particularly offensive as it implied that the land belonged to Rome, not God.
Right. That's how this brother took it. He was like, "Yo, nah, this paying taxes to Rome, it's like we his property.
Right.
It's like we paying it to him, and this land don't belong to God. It belongs to the Romans with this tax." He felt like it was like a disrespect.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I'm saying, they had some sort of feeling, but they just went about it the wrong route. But what people don't realize is how many uprisings they had before Christ.
Right.
And that's why they was always trying to trap Christ, because they looked at Christ as being, a zealous person, a zealous radical brother. Read on.
Yes, sir. Indeed, the payment of tribute became for the zealots a test of piety and allegiance to God. Simply put, if you thought it was lawful to pay tribute to Caesar, then you were a traitor and an apostate. You deserve to die. Inadvertently helping Judas's cause was the bumbling high priest at the time, a Roman lackey named Joazar, who happily went along with Quirinius' census and encouraged his fellow Jews to do the same. Sound like the church.
Sound like the Maccabees.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With the priest. Go ahead.
The collusion of the high priest was all the proof Judas and his followers needed that the temple itself had been defiled and must be forcibly rescued from the sinful hands of the priestly aristocracy. As far as Judas's zealots were concerned, Joazar's acceptance of the census was his death warrant. The fate of the Jewish nation depended on killing the high priest. Zeal demanded it, just as the sons of Mattathias showed zeal for the law by killing those Jews who sacrificed to any but God. Just as Josiah, king of Judah, butchered every uncircumcised man in his land because of his zeal for the mighty one, so now must these zealots turn back the wrath of God upon Israel by ridding the land of treasonous Jews like the high priest. It is clear from the fact that the Romans removed the high priest Joazar from his post not long after he had encouraged Jews to obey the census that Judas won the argument.
Okay, so go down to not long after. Meaning this, they got rid of him because this brother said, "Yo, you know what? You're right, Judas.
Right.
We shouldn't be paying taxes." Go ahead.
Not long after he led the charge against the census, Judas the Galilean was captured by Rome and killed. As retribution for the city's having given up its arms to Judas' followers, the Romans marched to Zephyrus and burned it to the ground.
You see what they did? The Romans destroyed that city. Go ahead.
The men were slaughtered, the women and children auctioned off as slaves. More than 2,000 rebels and sympathizers were crucified en masse. A short time later, Herod Antipas arrived and immediately set to work transforming the flattened ruins of Zephyrus into an extravagant royal city fit for a king.
That's another thing how Israelites went right into slavery under Rome, in Rome.
Right.
You know what I mean? Let's skip to page 42.
It's like you have a question there online too.
Oh, go ahead.
From Eric Bowden. He asks, can you break down Romans 9 and 3?
Go ahead. You can grab one.
He's from St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I wanted to see some questions.
If I could. Also on the TikTok, if everybody coming in here, don't be afraid to ask questions. You know what I'm saying? Ask your questions because that's the only way you're going to find out anything. If you don't ask, you're just going to stay ignorant. You know what I'm saying? If you want to know why we're teaching what we're teaching, we'll ask a question or two or 1,000. He's asking for Romans 9 and 3. Romans 9 verse 3. For I could wish that myself were accursed from Christ, for my brethren, my kinsmen, according to the flesh.
Right. Well, Paul is saying that he wished he was accursed from Christ, meaning that he rather that you would be saved and that he wouldn't be saved. Like Paul was so much about Israel that he said, man, I'd rather be cursed from Christ so that you will get a chance to be saved by Christ. Read on.
Verse 4.
Okay, now he got it.
Okay.
Actually, do he got it?
He gonna respond because he asked a question about 15 minutes ago. So
hey, I'm Salaki for that. All right. Definitely, if you got questions, hit me up.
Brother said, wow. I don't know if that's the same brother, but he said, wow.
Yeah, that's what.
That's what's up.
That's what's up. Salaki, y'all, I'm just going over a book that's really giving us a history, but you definitely hit me with questions. I'm going over a book, and this book is a good book, and it starts to go into what was going on before Christ and how different militant or radical groups was trying to rise up. They did it wrong, but they had a hatred for Rome and the so-called the high priest and the rich, because the rich and the high priest and the Romans was starving the people.
Right.
They were starving the people just like they starving us today.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So what you want me, page 47? Is that what you want?
Yeah. Where was we at?
47.
We was at 47, yeah.
47. 67.
You can briefly go into a few of this.
46? Okay, come on. We're in the book of Zealot, page 46. Perfect Pontius Pilate, excuse me.
This is a history on Pilate, a little bit of history that the Bible don't go into. Go ahead.
It says, Prefect Pontius Pilate arrived in Jerusalem in the year 26 CE. He was the 5th prefect or governor Rome had sent to oversee the occupation.
Right. Now, this is what had happened was that the Israelites kept rising up and they kept sending Romans as governors over Jerusalem and over Galilee and over Israel in general. But because of the brothers that was militant, Rome was dissatisfied with who they would send down there because they didn't stop the brothers from rebelling. They didn't stop the Israelites from rebelling. no matter what happens, it was always somebody willing to rise up and fight the Romans. Right. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. He had sent to oversee the occupation of Judea after the death of Herod the Great, the dismissal of his sons Archelaus as ethnarch in Jerusalem. Rome decided it would be best to govern the province directly rather than through yet another Jewish client king.
Give me on the next page right there.
But page 47. Pilate's disdain for the Jews was obvious.
Right, meaning he hated the Jews. Pontius Pilate hated the Israelites. Go ahead.
Just like Donald Trump.
And let me know if y'all can hear Ash, the reader.
Pilate's disdain for the Jews was obvious from the very first day he arrived in Jerusalem. Bedecked with a white tunic and golden breastplate, a red cape draped over his shoulders, the new governor announced his presence in the holy city by marching through Jerusalem's gates, trailed by a legion of Roman soldiers carrying standards bearing the emperor's image, an ostentatious display of contempt for Jewish sensibilities.
Meaning he didn't care about the Israelites. Right. He was there just to basically be a watchguard over Jerusalem and stop the uprising. And however he pleased was do it, he would just go ahead and do it, even if he had to kill children, men, women, whoever. Right.
If I can point out the brother saying this is better than my history class. I'm honored to be here.
Hey, the water too, brother. The water.
Right. Continuing. Later, he introduced a set of gilt Roman shields dedicated to Tiberius, son of the divine Augustus, into the temple of Jerusalem. The shields was an offering on behalf of the Roman gods. Their presence in the Jewish temple, a deliberate act of blasphemy.
Right. And the Romans would disrespect our God, our temple, and the people. They hated us because here's what you got to understand about the Israelites. The Israelites during the time of the Roman Empire, we were basically a major thorn in the South. You know what I mean? Far as in the East and far as Egypt, we were the people that was giving them headaches. They also had the Germanic tribes up north giving them problems, but Israel was their biggest problem.
Yeah. Informed by his engineers that Jerusalem needed to rebuild its aging aqueducts, Pilate simply took the money to pay for the project from the temple's treasury.
Right. He was supposed to pay for the aqueducts. Instead, he just took the money from out the temple, and he got it done from there.
When the Jews protested, Pilate sent his troops to slaughter them in the streets.
You hear that? Pilate just said, yo, go down there and murder them, slaughter them. You know what I mean? Put that uprising down.
The Gospels present Pilate with a righteous yet weak-willed man so overcome with doubt by putting Jesus of Nazareth to death that he does anything in his power to save his life. Finally, washing his hands of the entire episode when the Jews demanded his blood. That is pure fiction.
Meaning this, they portray Pilate like he was like somebody that said, nah, I'm done with this man. Right. Like you don't hear nothing about Pilate. Right. But the history of Pilate is that he couldn't stand Israelites. Right. Any uprising, he sent troops and the order was to slaughter them. That's the real Pilate. Right. Pontius Pilate.
Well, Pilate was best selected. So reading this also remind me of when you remember Donald Trump first came out and said, I don't know why you being nice to them. To take him and slam him into the car, like displaying his racism outright. You know what I'm saying? He wore it right on his feet.
Exactly. And it's heavy because that's how white cops deal with us.
Yep.
Like a disdain. You know what I mean? Like when they got to stop us, they be ready. Like, I don't know if you was I don't think you was with us in the car when I was driving back from the Passover about 3 years ago. You wasn't in the car with me. Matter of fact, I know you weren't in the car with me because you had to do the service.
Okay.
Anyway, this cop coming home was shot. I'm on the pipe on Jersey on the turnpike,
Right.
Jersey Turnpike. Cop stopped me. I was speeding, and I just told everybody, don't say anything. Let me deal with it. You know, everybody just hold your discipline. The cop, when he pulled me over, he got his car to come out, but when the woman went down, he started talking mad, crazy stuff to me.
Right.
I mean, like, yo, he looked in the car, looked in the car, blah, 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 blah. You know, like, but he was cursing.
Mm-hmm. He wanted to get a reaction onto it.
Yep.
And I was like, yo, you know, gave him a license. I didn't say much to him. So here you go. Said, did you know you was going? I said, no, I didn't really know, but I was, you know, because I'm just coming back, you know, from a religious function.
Right.
He wanted me to like go off, and you know how Jake do.
Right.
I know my right. What you stopping me? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it was real heavy. One day, General Hunter did a show on how, and I've always done this. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's funny. I've always done this before. You know, before he said that.
Right.
And when General Hunter said that, you got to learn how to deal with cops. You know what I mean? Like you got to have, you know, discipline. You know what I mean? Like it's a way of dealing with cops.
Right.
And this is the way I would deal with police officers, which they're the same thing as the Romans.
Right.
Cop pulled me over. In my mind, how I'm gonna speak to him as if I got 3 keys of coke in the trunk, a dead body, and an assault rifle.
Right. Right.
And I'm cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I've never gotten a ticket.
Right. Yeah. You gotta agree with him. Cause he tried.
I act like I got a dead body in there.
Right.
You ever see a brother that's dirty?
Right.
He the nicest dude to a cop. When a brother ain't dirty, he want to talk all the bad craziness to a cop.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because now he ain't got no drugs on him.
Right.
Today he ain't got no drugs on him.
Right.
But you got to be wiser than that.
Yeah.
Because like the judge was saying, he ain't trying to give you no ticket.
Yeah.
He trying to pull you over so you can either get killed or take you to jail and have your car taken.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I
He
mean?
hates us.
Yeah.
Sorry if I missed something. We got a question online, sir. Eskrin Littleton said, were the Romans responsible for the removal of the Apocrypha? If it wasn't for I.S.U.P.K, I wouldn't have known about it, nor the Maccabees.
The Roman Catholic Church.
That's right.
All right. Later on, it was the Roman Catholic Church. All right. Yeah.
Okay. This is pure fiction.
And correct me if I'm wrong. It was in the 1800s, right, or the 1700s that they removed. Yeah, I think it was the 1700s or the 18. But Captain Mashak getting ready to look it up just to give you the date. Is when they did the Roman Catholic Church did it, which is really the Roman Empire. Right. That's all. Which is the first beast. Right. That was wounded and rose back up. Go ahead.
What Pilate was
as the Roman Catholic Church.
What Pilate was best known for was his extreme depravity, his total disregard for Jewish law and tradition.
Right. He cared nothing about it. You know what I mean? Like he was like, yo, don't give a damn. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
And his barely concealed aversion to the Jewish nation as a whole.
In other words, he was like Trump, like Oscar said. In other words, he'll say what's on his damn mind and how he felt. Right. Regardless whether he was offending the entire nation or not. You know what I mean? And that's the white man, that pride of Esau. Yeah. That pride of Edom. Right.
During his tenure in Jerusalem, he was so eagerly and without trial sent thousands upon thousands of Jews to the cross that the people of Jerusalem felt obliged to lodge to the cross that the people of Jerusalem felt obliged to lodge a formal complaint with the Roman emperor.
You see that? And the way they paint, the way the Christian church in the movies paint Pontius Pilate You know what I mean? Like this man was just innocent, and he didn't really commit it. Y'all put Christ to death. Meanwhile, he sent thousands upon thousands to the cross.
Right.
So much that Israelites had to formally, they call it a complaint, but it's really begging.
Right.
They had to beg the Roman emperor to have him to slow down on the crucifixion.
It's very important also. And that's so heavy because when after his woman get a dream and then he said, I wash my hands, like that's so heavy as he would kill an Israelite in a second. But he said, listen, I ain't touching
this man I'm not messing with.
But then Sadducees and Pharisees still said, nah, go through, say Barabbas. Like that's to show you how wicked them rich Negroes really is.
Right.
Because if he, like, is that like Trump saying, you know what? Let the Mexicans go. And then rich Negroes is like, nah, deport them. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
He's like, yeah, it's something.
And let me tell you something. That's just the same thing with abortion.
Yeah.
That's the same thing with abortion.
Yeah.
They'll be like, no, we need abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And white people be like I remember being on Georgia Avenue, out there on the streets, and I didn't even know probably I was high all the time. This is back in the days, way back in the days, way back. And I'm walking up the avenue on a Saturday afternoon, and I asked my man, I said, there were people out there every Saturday. What the hell is that? And my man said, man, you knucklehead. He said, man, he said they protested. He said, man, that building is an abortion clinic. And I said, no wonder all I see is women, because I would be on that side of the street, and women would be coming up in there.
Yeah.
But the only people that would, protest is white people.
Yeah.
It's never black people. But black people don't need to protest. They just need to stop having abortions. We got the whole no sign. The reverends and the political leaders, all they got to do is just say the word and keep saying it. And guess what? Black people will follow it. Right. If black celebrities be against abortion and rappers, black people will stop being about abortion. Young sisters, young brothers will stop being about abortion. It don't take much. You know what I mean?
Come on.
But the Christian leaders and your political leaders is getting that money. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's convincing us to kill our own babies. Like, you got to think about that. Like 1,000 years from now, can you imagine us explaining that we was killing our own? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Can I make a point too? Also,
Yeah.
Something also. Could you imagine what is being in power and being white, right? And could you imagine also you going to a petting zoo and you go into that machine and put in the quarter in that machine, turning the knob, get out the peanuts, and here comes a sheep to peck at your hand, and you thinking, I got these people right here in the palm of my hand to my every whim and begging me for whatever. And without these peanuts, this people cannot function.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that's us. Right. We're the sheep that's being handed a handout because all we do is complain to the wrong people when we should be taking our causes to the Lord.
Right.
That's where it should always have gone. Right. Instead of to the Romans, in this case, the United States, in this case, Donald Trump. And let me say, if I could, one more thing, sir.
Right.
Like, people tend to forget there were Roman emperors who didn't say much and seemed like they were on the side of the people, but still had a slaughter.
Right.
I'm saying that to say because a lot of people say, oh, Trump this and that. But what about Biden? Right? Because he don't say the same thing as Trump does not make him any less racist.
Right.
He just don't show it out there. He's just as racist as Trump.
Saladia, he showed up by signing laws and lock you up.
There it is.
You know what I mean? He don't say much, but that pen be condemning us.
Like they say, the pen is mightier than the sword right there. Okay, so we continue right here. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so it says during his tenure in Jerusalem, he was eager, and without trial, sent thousands upon thousands of Jews to the cross, as the people of Jerusalem felt obliged to lodge a formal complaint with the Roman emperor. Continuing, despite or perhaps because of his cold, hard cruelty to the Jews, Pontius Pilate became one of the longest-serving Roman governors in Judea. Can I say something real quick, sir? And this shows you that these people, these Jews that were suffering, not one of them looked like what the people believed to be the Jews that had a harsh, rough time with Hitler. This strictly was us, blacks and Hispanics and Native American Indians, going under this cruelty, so much so that you can literally compare it to today. If you don't believe me, just turn on the Facebook and the YouTube and all the social media outlets, and you'll see it live and in living color.
Right.
It's a lot, sir.
No sweat.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. No sweat. Okay. Can we get you a break?
No, I'm good, sir.
Okay.
I'm good. It's a lot. Okay. It was a perilous and volatile job. The governor's most important task was to ensure the uninterrupted flow of tax revenues back to Rome. But to do so, he had to maintain a functional, if fragile, relationship with the high priest.
Just like today with the Christian, black Christian leaders.
The governor would administer the civil and economic affairs of Judea.
Let me just say this.
Yeah.
If they want to push something that is morally wrong, all you got to do is get the so-called Christian church, Muslim leaders like Farrakhan,
right?
You know what I mean, and black celebrities like Cornel West, those Uncle Toms and stuff. Hey, give me some of those Hispanic brothers. I know some got to be cool,
like Louis Guzman, like what's that baseball player? The Manasseh, Sammy Sosa. I'm gonna throw him in the bag, right? What's that brother that remember he's been a long time politician in New York? What's his name? I forgot his name, but he was I forgot what his name is, sir. It's like it. But he's been a long-running political figure in the New York City scene. You know what I'm saying? But
because he does whatever any man tell him.
That's right. That's right. He's famous for that.
And he's been in his office for years.
For years. And did Jack, I want to say the word, I'm gonna hold back. But when he was up and coming in the Bronx looked worse than Vietnam back in those days, right? General. And he was in the midst of all that. Not just him, but every Latino celebrities. And if I could, said I thought about this earlier. I heard Captain Mashak talk about the Negroes, how they would say also in support of deporting Latinos. But what about you sellout Latinos also who supported Trump to have your brethren deported as well? Right. To this day. Why? Because they're going to steal your jobs? Well, they're doing a job that you ain't going to do here in America. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. Until you get locked up. And then you think about it. To lock you.
Right. And that's the crazy thing. And that's why when we out there in them streets, man, I used to always bang on them leaders. Right. You know what I mean? I remember when I was I became an officer and I didn't know exactly what topic to speak on. And I said, how do you reach the people? I told GEN.YAHANNA. And he said, how you reach the people is how you reach the people and make them, listen. He said by destroying the black leadership or what they say. You know what I mean? Like we always got to rise up. There's always going to be a conflict between the righteous and the wicked. Right. You know what I mean? The real prophets from the false prophets. You know what I mean?
Okay, page 48. It says, continuing, and economic affairs of Judea, while the high priest maintained the temple cults. The tenuous bond between the two offices meant that no Roman governor or Jewish high priest lasted very long, especially in those first few decades after Herod's death.
because a lot of them, the so-called governors and the high priest, they either got, the high priest either got killed or removed by the Romans, and it was the Romans who picked your high priest at that time. Go ahead.
The 5 governors before Pilate served only a couple of years each, the lone exception being Pilate's immediate predecessor, Valerius Gratus. But whereas Gratus appointed and dismissed 5 different high priests in his time as governor, throughout Pilate's decade-long tenure in Jerusalem, he had only one high priest to contend with.
You know who that was?
Joseph Caiaphas.
Right. The Caiaphas that put Christ to death.
Right.
Continuing. Like most high priests, Caiaphas was an extremely wealthy man. Though his wealth may have come through his wife, who was the daughter of a previous high priest named Ananias. Caiaphas likely was appointed to the office of high priest not because of his own merit, but through the influence of his father-in-law, a larger-than-life character who managed to pass the position of 5 of his own sons while remaining a significant force throughout Caiaphas' tenure.
All right, stop right there. Let me just give a little history on Caiaphas in the Bible.
11, 36.
John.
No sweat, sir.
John, real quick. Your brother getting it now. And so it mentioned in Caiaphas how much he a sellout and that he was rich. He was wealthy. You know, he was getting money from the temple. You know what I mean? Of course, the high priest, he's supposed to get money, but he probably robbing the people.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Kamakan, sir.
Where we at? Just let me know.
Kamakan. John chapter 11, verse 49.
Okay, go ahead, brother.
Kamakan. And one of them, named Caiaphas, being the high priest that same year, said unto them, Ye know nothing at all, nor consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation perish not.
Right. Keep on.
Kamakan. And this spake he not of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus should die for that nation.
Where it says lose our seat.
Kamakan. Verse 48, sir. We'll go to 47, sir.
And this is the seat he talking about. That wealth. That high priest brought him wealth. Go ahead, brother.
Kamakan, sir. John chapter 11, verse 47. Then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees a council, and said, What do we? For this man doeth many miracles. If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation.
And that's the reason why, because if you don't do what the Romans or white politicians, this goes for both times, back then and today, if our Negro leaders and them high priests and them Pharisees, they knew that their job was to keep the people in line.
Right.
That they are supposed to keep the people not being able to rise up. Right. You know what I mean? Right.
Okay. Continuing in the book called Zealot. According to the Gospel of John, after Jesus was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane, he was first brought to Ananias for questioning before being dragged to Caiaphas for judgment. Gratus had appointed Caiaphas as high priest in the year 18 CE, meaning, excuse me, he had already served 8 years in the office by the time Pilate arrived in Jerusalem. Part of the reason Caiaphas was able to hold position of high priest for an unprecedented 18 years was because of the close relationship he ended up forging with Pontius Pilate.
Money, right?
The two men worked well together.
Getting money,
right?
The period for their combined rule from 26 CE to 36 CE coincide with the most stable period in the entire first century.
You hear that? Because they was keeping they was keeping them uprising down. Rome finally didn't have to deal with Jerusalem or Judea. You know what I mean? With all them uprisings that they had in the past. Go ahead.
Together, they managed to keep a lid on the revolutionary impulse of the Jews by dealing ruthlessly with a hint of political disturbance, no matter how small.
Where we at? Okay.
At the bottom of page 48. Sir.
I'm gonna skip to. Now, there's some information here. I'm gonna go through this whole chapter. This is a lot.
Okay. Continuing at the bottom of page 48. Yet, despite their best efforts, Pilate and Caiaphas were unable to extinguish the zeal that had been kindled in the hearts of the Jews by the Messianic uprisings that took place at the turn of the century.
Meaning a lot of the brothers started rising up, different groups being real radical. Go ahead.
Those of Hezekiah, the bandit chief, Simon of Perea, Athronges, the shepherd boy, and Judas the Galilean.
These was brothers that had different groups that was rising up and that was trying to get Rome out of Israel. All right.
Not long after, Pilate arrived in Jerusalem. A new crop of preachers, prophets, bandits, and messiahs began traipsing through the Holy Land.
And I'm reiterating about the word bandit, that the Romans used that if a brother was a revolutionary, that he was real radical. He called them a bandit. Right. Because to them, it was a criminal offense of sedition to go up against Rome.
Gathering disciples, preaching liberation from Rome, and promising the coming of the kingdom of God. In 20 CE, an ascetic preacher named John began baptizing people in the waters of the Jordan River, initiating them into what he believed was the true nation of Israel.
You skip down to the bottom right here.
Bottom of page 49.
Well, put it at, it was.
Okay. Yes, sir. Come. It was the final act of unrestrained violence on Mount Gerizim that ended Pilate's governorship in Jerusalem.
I should have skipped. Go back to John.
John? Okay.
My fault. I skipped another vital piece of information.
Preach. Okay, come. In 28 CE, an ascetic preacher named John began baptizing people in the waters of the Jordan River, initiating them into what he believed was the true nation of Israel.
John preached repentance. That's what he really preached. All right. This book is not a prophet, but it's a man that's given history. Go ahead.
When John the Baptist's popularity became too great to control, Pilate's tetrarch in Perea, Herod Antipas, had him imprisoned and executed sometime around 30 CE.
Okay, 30 CE.
Right. A couple of years later, a woodworker from Nazareth named Jesus led a band of disciples on a triumphant procession into Jerusalem, where he assaulted the temple, overturned the tables of...
He what?
Assaulted the temple.
Christ went up in there and he assaulted the temple. Meaning he was in there whipping some butt. All right. He was cracking some heads. Go ahead.
Overturned the tables of the money changers.
Flipped the tables. Go ahead.
And broke free the sacrificial animals from their cages.
He freed all the animals. Go ahead.
He too was captured and sentenced to death by Pilate.
Go ahead.
3 years after that, in 36 CE, a Messiah known only as the Samaritan gathered a group of followers atop Mount Gerizim, where he claimed he would reveal sacred vessels hidden there by Moses. Pilate responded with a detachment of Roman soldiers who climbed Gerizim and cut the Samaritans' faithful multitude to pieces. It was the final act of unrestrained violence on Mount Gerizim that it ended Pilate's governorship in Jerusalem.
So the Romans was going through a lot of us, our people uprising.
Right.
We kept uprising. 10 years later, another uprising. And the Romans just got tired of it eventually around 70 AD. I'm gonna try to get to the last bit because it's pretty good information. Go ahead.
If I could say, there's a parallel to that is like this BLM movement, right? When we saw the violence of our brethren getting killed on the street, the brothers took to the streets.
Right, exactly. That under another false leader.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? You know, right? Go ahead.
Summoned to Rome to explain his actions to the Emperor Tiberius, Pilate never returned to Judea. He was exiled to Gaul in 36 CE. Considering their close working relationship, it may be no coincidence that Joseph Caiaphas was dismissed from his position as high priest in the same year. With Pilate and Caiaphas gone, there was no longer any hope of stifling the revolutionary passions of the Jews. By mid-century, the whole Palestine was buzzing with Messianic energy.
Meaning a lot of brothers was trying to rise up. That's what it's talking about, buzzing. By this time, Christ is already gone, because when he did that at the temple later on, as you know in the Bible, they crucified Christ.
Right.
In 44 CE.
And in this book, they say when he did it, him and the apostles was like the way they did it, they blocked off where the Romans couldn't come in the temple, and the Sanhedrin couldn't get at them either. When they go into it again. But go ahead.
In 44 CE, a wonder-working prophet named TITHES crowned himself Messiah and brought hundreds of followers to the Jordan, promising to part the river just as Moses had done at the Sea of Reeds 1,000 years earlier.
And y'all think some of these Negroes out here doing something new by telling lies or parting, like this brother said, I'm a part the Jordan River. You know what I mean? And people were following him and believed him.
Right.
And if I could, that's no different than some preachers saying they got this special oil that will heal you, that will grant you money from somewhere because it's a blessing from God.
Right.
You know.
Also, you got another whacked out kid called Raven his Bird talking about the wildernesses in the Filipinos.
Right.
But he married to a heathen Filipino woman. I guess you would get people to follow out to the Philippines.
Yeah,
that's why the Lord said, don't marry a heathen.
Right.
You know what I mean? Don't have no heathen wives. This cat got brothers and sisters talking about leaving America and telling them that the wilderness is over in the Philippine Islands.
Right.
This, he claimed, will be the first step in reclaiming the promised land from Rome. The Romans, in response, dispatched an army to lop off Theodosius' head and scattered his followers into the desert. In 46 CE, two sons of Judas, the Galilean, Jacob and Simon, launched their own revolutionary movement in the footsteps of their father and grandfather.
Right. So you remember the cat named Judas the Galilean. Now his sons come up and they do what?
Launch their own revolutionary movement in the footsteps of their father and grandfather. Both were crucified for their actions. What Rome required to keep these Messianic stirrings in check was a steady, sensible hand, someone who would respond to the grumblings of the Jews while still maintaining peace and order in the Judean and Galilean countryside. Sound forbidden.
Yeah, and you know what? The so-called white man, like you know how in Revelation, the 11th chapter, where it talks about where they crucified Christ, talking about America.
Right.
Here in America, they give you your Masonic leaders now.
That's right.
Your Masonic leaders don't rise up. They give you Jesse Jackson, so-called Dr. Martin Luther King. Right. Those was leaders that they gave you. When you start to research the history behind them, them cats. It was other local leaders that was more radical than them, but they pushed Martin Luther King in front and in the public eye.
Right.
So now America give you your Masonic. Before, a radical brother would rise up, he would be off, but his intentions was right, but not according to the Most High, and he would rise up and try to fight against the Romans. And of course, he would lose and get put to death.
Right.
Because Israel was still wicked.
What Rome sent to Jerusalem instead was a series of bumbling governors, each more vicious and gritty than the last, whose corruption and ineptitude would transform the anger, resentment, and apocalyptic mania that had been steadily building throughout Jerusalem into a full-scale revolution. It started with Vendidus Communus, who was stationed in Jerusalem in 48 CE. 2 years after, after the uprising of Judas' son had been quelled, as governor, Communus was little more than a thief and a fool.
In other words, he was just there to steal money.
Right.
You know what I mean? He was a Roman sent down there. He said, yo, let me get my hustle on. I'm gonna make some money out this. That's what he was there for. Go ahead.
If I could, you should take what we're reading out this book and look at us in America. It's just repeating itself, General.
Right.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
Among the first acts was the posting of Roman soldiers on the roofs of the temple's porticos, ostensibly to guard against chaos and disorder during the Feast of Passover. In the midst of the holy celebrations, one of these soldiers thought it would be amusing to pull back his garment.
Talking about a Roman guard sitting on the roof on our temple. Whereas he ain't even supposed to be nowhere near inside the temple.
Right.
Let alone on the roof of the temple. Go ahead. So tell him what he did.
So he says thought it would be amusing to pull back his garment and display his bare ass to the congregation below.
That's what this white Roman. Now let's check out what the people did.
All the while shouting what Josephus in his decorum describes as such words as you might expect upon such a posture. The crowd was incensed. A riot broke out in the temple plaza. Rather than calming the situation, Communus sent a cohort of Roman soldiers up to the temple mouth to butcher the panicked crowd. The pilgrims who escaped the slaughter were trapped by the narrow exits leading out of the temple courtyard. Hundreds were trampled underfoot.
So when this devil did that, he caused an uproar, and they just started going off. Go ahead.
Tensions escalated further after one of Communus's legionaries grabbed hold of the Torah scroll and tore it to pieces in front of the Jewish assembly.
Right. Now this other Roman, he take the Torah, rip it up in front of the assembly. Go ahead.
Communus had the soldier hastily executed, but it was not enough to quell the growing anger and disaffection among the Jews.
He thought by killing him that they would be satisfied. You got to understand, they've been occupying the land for like maybe 100 years, 200 years now by this time. Because I think they came in physically in, I think, 168 BC, something like that. Go ahead. That's the Romans.
Yes, sir. Things came to a head when a group of Jewish travelers from Galilee were attacked while passing through Samaria on their way to Jerusalem. When Communus dismissed the Jews' appeal for justice, allegedly because the Samaritans had bribed him, a group of bandits led by a man named Eleazar, son of Danias, took justice into their own hands and went on a rampage throughout Samaria, killing every Samaritan they came across.
Which were heathens. You had Israelites in Samaria, then you had heathens. Right.
This was more than an act of bloody vengeance. It was an assertion of freedom by a people fed up with allowing law and order to rest in the hands of a crooked and fickle administrator from Rome. The outbreak of violence between the Jews and Samaritans was the last straw of the emperor. In 52 CE, Ventidius Communus was sent into exile, and Antonius Felix was shipped off to Jerusalem in his stead.
And let me tell you something. Forgive me. We had a lot of uproars in America. And my point is, the so-called Proud Boys and all these other white race, they getting tired of our uproars.
Right.
You know what I mean? Eventually, they want, and that's the thing about the Democrats and the Republicans.
Right.
They all want to rid themselves of us.
Right.
But they want to keep some of us alive to serve America. But a lot of us, they would like to kill.
Right.
A lot of us, they love to incarcerate. You know what I mean? Right.
As governor, Felix fared no better than his predecessor. Like Communus, he treated the Jews under his control with utter contempt. He used the power of the purse to play the different Jewish factions in Jerusalem against one another, always to his benefit. He seemed at first to have enjoyed a close relationship with the high priest Jonathan, one of the 5 sons of Ananus, who served in the position. Felix and Jonathan worked together to suppress the bandit gangs in the Judean countryside. Jonathan may have even played a role in Felix's capture of the bandit chief Eleazar, son of Denius.
And when they talk about the countryside, it's like the poor lived all outside in the countryside,
right,
outside the cities. All right. And that's where most of the uprising was coming from.
Right.
Who was sent to Rome and crucified. But once the high priest had served Felix's purpose, he was cast aside.
Right.
Some say Felix had a hand in what happened next, for it was under his governorship that a new kind of bandit arose in Jerusalem, a shadowy group of Jewish rebels that the Romans dubbed Sicarii, or daggermen.
All this is way after Christ now. Go ahead.
Due to their penchant for small, easy to conceal daggers called Sakai, with which they assassinated the enemies of God. The Sicarii were zealots fueled by an apocalyptic worldview and fervent devotion to establishing God's rule on earth. They were fanatical in their opposition to the Roman occupation. Though they reserved the vengeance for the Jews, particularly among the wealthy priestly aristocracy who submitted to Rome rule.
Right.
Fearless and unstoppable, the Sicarii murdered their opponents with impunity. In the middle of the city, in broad daylight, in the midst of great hordes, during feast days and festivals, they blended into assemblies and crowds, their daggers tucked inside their clothes until they were close enough to strike.
Right. These guys would get up on you, right, and strike you at the feast days. These brothers was like straight up assassins.
Right.
Then, as the dead man collapsed to the ground, covered in blood, the Sicarii would sheathe his daggers stealthily and join their voices in the cries of indignation from the panicked crowd.
Right. So as they hit you, they disappear in the crowd.
Right.
All you see is somebody like a high priest or somebody real rich, wealthy, they'll drop. Go ahead.
The leader of the Sicarii at the time was a young Jewish revolutionary named Menahem, the grandson of none other than the failed Messiah, Judas the Galilean.
This cat had grandsons,
right,
that was always rising up. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, they wrong, but, you know, in that time, they was just trying to rid themselves of the Roman Empire. Go ahead. Well, rid themselves of the Romans out of the land. Go ahead.
Menahem shared his grandfather's hatred for the wealthy priestly aristocracy in general, and the unconscious high priest in particular. To the Sicarii, Jonathan, the son of Ananias, was an impostor, a thief, and a swindler who had grown rich by exploiting the suffering of the people. He was responsible for the bondage of the Jews as the heathen emperor in Rome. His presence on the Temple Mount defiled the entire nation. His very existence was an abomination to the Lord. He had to die. In the year 56 CE, the Sicarii, under Menaham's leadership, were finally able to achieve what Judas the Galilean could only dream of accomplishing. During the feast of Passover, a Sicarii assassin pushed his way through the mass of pilgrims packed into the Temple Mount until he was close enough to the high priest Jonathan, then pulled out a dagger and swiped it across his throat. Then he melted back into the crowd.
This cat come out the crowd, slice and go right back into the crowd. Right. All right, he kills this high priest. Go ahead.
The murder of the high priest threw all of Jerusalem into a panic. How could the leader of the Jewish nation, God's representative on earth, be killed in broad daylight in the middle of the temple courtyard and seemingly with impunity? Many refused to believe that the culprit could have been a Jew. There were whispers that the Roman governor Felix had ordered the assassination of himself. Had ordered the assassination himself.
You see that? Go ahead.
Who else could have been so profane as to spill the high priest's blood on the temple grounds? Yet the Sicarii...
Because that's something they figure a Roman would do. To desecrate, you know what I mean? They just desecrate the temple by killing a man inside the high priest at that. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
Yet the Sicarii had only begun their reign of terror. Shouting their slogan, "No Lord but God," they began attacking the members of the Jewish ruling class, plundering their position, kidnapping their relatives.
Because they realized that they were also a problem, just like today with us. One of our biggest problems is also the so-called the black and Latino celebrities and black politicians and the black and Latino Christian leaders.
Right. And burning down their homes. By these tactics, they sowed terror into the hearts of the Jews, so that, as Josephus writes, more terrible than their crimes was the fear they aroused, every man hourly expecting death, as in war.
In other words, them so-called rich was scared as hell.
Right.
You know what I mean? Go ahead.
With Jonathan's death, the Messianic ardor in Jerusalem reached fever pitch. There was a widespread sense among the Jews that something profound was happening. A feeling born of desperation, nurtured by a people yearning for freedom from foreign rule.
Okay, you can go down to Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem, a holy man named Jesus, son of Ananias, suddenly appeared, prophesying the destruction of the city and the imminent return of the Messiah. Another man, a mysterious...
Like I said, Christ is already gone and have been risen. And this is afterwards. And they still looking, because they weren't followers of Christ. They still looking for the Christ.
Right.
But Christ is already gone.
In Jerusalem, a holy man named Jesus, son of Ananias, suddenly appeared, prophesying the destruction of the city and the imminent return of the Messiah. Another man, a mysterious Jewish sorcerer called the Egyptians.
Go ahead.
Come. Acts chapter 21, verse 37. And as Paul was to be led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, "May I speak unto thee?" Who said, "Canst thou speak Greek? Art not thou that Egyptian?"
They had Paul confused with this cat.
Right.
Paul thought that, the Romans thought that Paul was an Egyptian, but this Egyptian wasn't an Egyptian. He was only called an Egyptian, but he was an Israelite. Right. When you research the Egyptian in the book of Acts, you'll find out that he was an Israelite.
Right.
That was just a radical brother. Go ahead. Yeah, okay. Yeah. But go back to
yes,
Jewish
sir.
sorcerer.
Jewish sorcerer called the Egyptian declared himself king of the Jews and gathered thousands of followers on the Mount of Olives, where he vowed that, like Joshua at Jericho, he would bring the walls of Jerusalem tumbling down at his command.
Like Al Sharpton back in early 2000s when he went and circled the Justice Department 6 times. That was at the same time that they had the Glenn Beck. That wasn't. Was that the time Glenn Beck rally? I know we was down. We was down there. I know it was on a Saturday, and the generals came down. But go ahead.
The crowd was massacred by Roman troops, though, as far as anyone knows, the Egyptian escaped. Felix's bumbling reaction to these events ultimately led to his sacking and replacement with another, Porcius Festus. But Festus proved no better in dealing with the restive Jewish population, either in the countryside where the number of prophets and messiahs gathering followers and preaching liberation from Rome was growing out of control, or in Jerusalem where the Sicarii, buoyed by their success in killing the high priest Jonathan, were now murdering and pillaging at will. So overwhelmed was Festus by the stress of the position that he died soon after taking the office. He was followed by Lucius Albinus.
Next page. Okay. I'm starting speaking.
Yes, sir. Page 55. In May of 66 CE, Florus suddenly announced that the Jews owed Rome 100,000 denarii in unpaid taxes.
Yeah, that. Read that again.
Florus suddenly announced that the Jews owed Rome 100,000 denarii in unpaid taxes.
In other words, he's saying, Jerusalem, they owe me now. They owe 100 denarii. Go ahead. Just like the Europeans do to the islands, like Haiti and what's another island that they Puerto Rico, Jamaica. Also, I know Venezuela was trying to get what's my man that died? That used to be the president of Venezuela, Chavez. He also was trying to get a few countries out of debt with America and so-called, I think, Spain or Portugal. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
Trailed by an army of bodyguards, the Roman governor marched into the temple and broke into the treasury, plundering the money that the Jews had offered as a sacrifice to the Lord. Riots ensued, to which Florus responded by sending 1,000 Roman soldiers into the upper city to murder at will. The soldiers killed women and children. They broke into homes and slaughtered people in their beds. The city was thrown into chaos. War was on the horizon. To calm the situation, the Romans sent the Jews one of their own, Agrippa II, whose father, Agrippa I, was a beloved Jewish leader who managed to maintain a close bond with Rome. Although the son did not share his father's popularity, his late father's popularity, he was the best hope for the Romans. He was the best hope the Romans had for diffusing the tension in Jerusalem. And this sounds just like how they would send Al Sharpton.
Right. Anytime something happens, they send Al or Jesse Jackson.
Yep. Right. Salami.
Now they were sending Black Lives Matter.
Yep.
Right. Don't think they wouldn't be a sent.
Right. Although the son did not share his young Agrippa rushed into the holy city in the last effort to stave off war. Standing on the roof of the royal palace with his sister Bernice at his side, he pleaded with the Jews to face the reality of the situation. Will you defy the whole Roman Empire? He asked.
In other words, he was trying to warn them, Like Rome getting tired of you.
Right.
They getting tired of you. You gonna defy the Roman Empire, all of it?
Right.
Like you ain't, you know what I mean? That's like the Black Panthers, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like you gonna fight the entire police force and the National Guards and the United States government? Go ahead.
He asks, what is the army? Where is the weapon on which you rely?
Like what army do you got? What weapons do you that you rely on?
Where is your fleet to sweep the Roman seas? Where is your treasure to meet the cost of your campaign? Do you really suppose that you're going to war with Egyptians and or Arabs?
In other words, he's saying, let's get real. Get real. This is who you up against. Somebody that crushes nations.
Right.
You know what I mean? Go ahead.
Will you shut up your eyes to the might of the Roman Empire? Will you not measure your own weakness? Are you wealthier than the Gauls, stronger than the Germans, more intelligent than the Greeks, more numerous than all the peoples of the world?
Who the Romans had already crushed.
What is it which inspires you with confidence to defy the Romans? Of course, the revolutionaries had an answer to Agrippa's question. It was zeal that inspired them. The same zeal that had led the Maccabees to throw off Seleucid control 2 centuries before. The zeal had helped the Israelites conquer the promised land in the first place. Would not have helped this ragtag band of Jewish revolutionaries to throw off the shackles of Roman occupation.
Right.
Derided and ignored by the crowd, Agrippa and Bernice had no choice but to flee the city.
All right, we get some. Go ahead.
Still, up to this point, war with Rome could have been avoided if it had not been for the actions of a young man named Eleazar, who, as the temple captain, was the priestly official with powers to police disturbances in the temple vicinity. Backed by a group of lower-class priests, Eleazar seized control of the temple and put an end to the daily sacrifices on behalf of the emperor. The signal sent to Rome was clear. Jerusalem had declared its independence. In a short time, the rest of Judea and Galilee, Idumea and Perea, Samaria, and all the villages scattered across the Dead Sea Valley would follow. Menahem and the Shikari rallied to the temple's captain's side. Together, they expelled all non-Jews from Jerusalem, just as the scriptures demanded.
So right now, they kicking the Romans out. This is 66 A.D. 4 years prior to 70 A.D.
Right.
I ran out of time, but you could probably catch me next week on the history class, and then I'm gonna go into that whole period of 66 A.D. in this book, all the way up until 73 A.D. And then you'll see how it talks about Nero, Vespasian, Titus, and that Vespasian, what his whole point was, and that he was tired of Israel, was to just totally annihilate them, not because he hated the Jews so much, but that he wanted to show the Israelites,
right,
these people that have been a problem for over 100 years, that I'm here to destroy your God and disrespect your God.
Right. If I may, sir. And I had a precept, if I could, real quick, sir. As we go into this history, sir, it's crazy how we reading that America is not the beginning of white supremacy and the hatred the white man has had for our people. The same way, it's not the first time we've had brothers who know what's happened to them is wrong, but they're going about it the wrong way. And I thought about this precept, sir.
Come on with it.
Romans chapter 10, verse 2. For I bear them record that they have a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge.
Right.
It's like, if I may, it's brothers out there the same way we all were in the world, and we understood why we hated these people. We hated these people, but we didn't understand why we hated them and how is the right way to hate them. The ISUPK under Commanding General Yahanna is where you come to turn that hate into something productive for your people. You understand? Like what these cats did here, you know, it's not the solution. Because like the general said, 4 years later in 70 AD, we still lost our city. We still lost Jerusalem.
You're right. And that is really what it's about. And that's what we're here to do, man. We're trying to do better than what they did, man. Our whole job is to wake brothers up so we'd be able to return and that the Lord will look down and put an end to this suffering. Like, you got to think about it. You talking 2,000 years.
Right.
Like a lot of Israelites, what they be talking about is 400 years of slavery.
Right.
I'm not looking at it like that.
Right.
I'm looking at it like more like this is like 2,000 years of slavery.
Right.
From different lands to lands and being scattered. Go ahead.
If I could, even more, if we're dealing with the Edomites, he goes back into Greece.
Exactly.
More than 2,000 years.
Right. Right. 300 AD. Right. 300 AD. You know what I mean? And what happened was they was trying to do what the Maccabees had did.
Right.
But they didn't understand about the Maccabees because the Maccabees eventually made a league with the same people they fight.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So they started, which we weren't supposed to do because in the book of Joshua it says make no league with no nation.
That's right.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Our league and our commitment was supposed to be with the Most High. That's really what we're trying to do now.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're trying to get back and join ourselves to them. That's the whole job. That's why, like other Israelites talking about, they hate the camps and all that. Well, it's the camp dudes that be going out there in these streets, man.
Right.
That's right.
You know what I mean? I'm serious.
Right.
And our job is to wake people up. And I'm like this. I'm not so much wonderful if they come through the door.
Right.
But it's all right with me if they don't and they return to the Lord the right way.
That's right.
Like not every man can go out here and be a soldier.
Right.
And plus we're gonna need some civilians. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I laugh at the brothers that be talking about how much they hate the camps. Nigga, you only hate it because you can't do it. You ain't got that strength.
That's right.
You know what I mean? It ain't even really your hatred. It's your jealousy.
Yeah,
it's really the jealousy.
And your weakness.
Yeah, you know, right. You know what I mean? And jealous, right. You know what I mean? So, hey, until next week, General Haas, he gave me the opportunity to come here to do the show with today. You know what I mean? And I guess he'll be back. So I'll finish the rest of this probably next Monday on the history class. You know what I mean? All right, the water.
All right, sir.
Hey, shalom. And the water to the Commander General Yahanna. And the water to all the generals. But big up to General Yahanna. You know I'm gonna be checking you out tonight. While I try to work out, you know what I mean? Listening to it. Sometimes you make me get up off the floor and look and stand. But the water Commander General Yahanna. You know what I mean? Ahead,
also, too, do not forget to this Thursday and Friday is the Feast of Purim. And we'll go into that history on those 2 days. History that we have even in the Persian Empire when we almost got killed off because of once again, an Edomite, a so-called Jewish person, right? From the what we know as Amalek,
right?
You know what I'm saying? Like this history with this white man, this devil, has been far long,
right?
You know what I'm saying? But once again, we got to come into the ISUPK only to find out how to do it the right way, right. You know, not on the whim, because on the whim gets us killed, as we read in the book,
right?
Zealot.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's all I have to say, sir.
Right. And he right, because also right after that was the Maccabees.
Right.
Which is just like today. Like the Maccabees ran from the Greeks to the Romans. Negroes run from the Democrats to the Republicans back to the Democrats.
Come on, sir.
You know what I mean? Hey, I'm gonna say shalom. Yahweh Shem Yahushua Baraka Thumb to the and shalom Shema Alatha Bashim Yahushua to the sisters.
Yeah, right, sir.
Passover, April 24th. Get down, Dallas. Houston, Sloppy.
The Lord loved us so much that in our poverty, in our hell, I will come and deliver them broken, destroyed, messed up, poor, impoverished people. I'm going to.
Young niggas ain't tough. Young niggas ain't tough.
Shalom Israel. Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah Brakatah. Yahweh Shema Alatah Bashim Yahweh Shah to all the sisters, man. Listen, it's Captain 13,000 that called up a rhyme, checking in with the Israelite school of UPK under Commander GEN.YAHANNA.
Power in, you know we not no cowards. Oh, you on that?
Listen, man, this year's 52nd annual Passover. Hold on, I'm gonna say it one more time. This year's 52nd annual Passover under Commander GEN.YAHANNA under the I.S.U.P.K. Couldn't do it last year. Y'all already know the Lord had his foot on our oppressor's neck.
Here in New York City, there are roughly 1,000 cases a day. Those are numbers they haven't seen since May.
Can't do it in New York this year because the Lord still got his foot on our oppressor's neck.
New York, the center of the outbreak this spring, is now teetering on another deadly explosion of the virus.
But listen to me good. This year, 52nd annual Passover, April 24th, 2021. You understand? It's gonna be in H-Town, baby.
It's gonna be at the B&H Ranch, 14149 Players Street, Houston, Texas.
Y'all know what we do. Y'all know what we came to do. Huh?
2021, I.S.U.P.K, 52nd annual Passover. All the generals gonna be there. All the heavy hitters gonna be there. The daughters of Zion gonna step out with their beautiful long dresses, you understand? Strong on deck. That One West style music on deck. 52nd annual Passover.
B&H Ranch, 14149 Players Street, Houston, Texas.
Get with it to get lost, man.
Got it out the mud, straight up out the base. The world done made me crazy. The world done turned crazy. You dealing with the